What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel. It's been a minute since I've given all of you guys some NFL content, but since the regular season is over, since it's all done, I figured who better to wrap it up with than my guest from earlier in the season, someone that I saw the Ravens stomp the Bengals with, my good cousin Benji from down south. What's going on, Ben?
Love y'all.
Good stuff, man.
Doing
Great.
all right.
Good,
Happy to be here. Happy to be back.
good stuff, man. Great to have you back. Happy New Year, by the way.
Happy New Year. Happy holidays, fam.
No doubt, no doubt. Let's jump into this though, man. Because first of all, before we even go into the playoffs, let's just go ahead and wrap up the regular season because it's all done now, man. It's all wrapped up. Everything is in the books. Ew, I tell you what, it's been a weird season. It's really been a strange season up and down. Like just starting off with game number 1 with the Vikings and the Bears. The Bears win a game in which the Vikings sat everybody important, and I think the Bears for the most part played their starters.
They did.
But I think yeah they did. You're right. I think the story of this game though is two things. One, the Vikings have a terrible backup quarterback. They need to really assess the quarterback situation. Their starter isn't too much better, but we're gonna get into that next week. Well, for the playoffs, that is. But yeah, they've obviously have some holes that they need to fill. Without Dalvin Cook, that offense is non-existent. That defense is solid, but the offense can't do anything. And as far as the Bears, they're gonna have to reassess everything because they poured their whole offseason into, if we have a kicker, then we can go back to the playoffs and eventually get back to the Super Bowl. They won't even make it to the playoffs now. They need to reassess everything, like offense and defense. They need to reassess. What do you see from these two teams moving forward?
Oh, I'm gonna start with the Bears. They wanted to win this game because they were just trying to finish 8-8. So they could say they didn't have a losing season. But as you said, they're trying to find a kicker and everything. They put all their resources in that because let's be real. Last year, 2018, the Bears were a dangerous team, and they were looking pretty good. Trubisky, he I'm not talking about this year, but last year, he wasn't bad. He was kind of bad, but he wasn't bad, right?
Right.
So he could at least be serviceable. So you understood where the Bears were coming from, but I think the biggest problem for the Bears this year, the biggest thing to talk about, is that Trubisky didn't progress.
Yeah.
To this season. Yeah. He just didn't take any steps forward. He didn't look like an improved player. He looked like he had plateaued and was the same. And as a result, the team struggled. And add in the fact that now other football teams were starting to figure out Matt Nagy and the Bears' offensive system. That because there was no progression, particularly in the offensive side of the ball, they couldn't get it done this year.
It's true because if you think about it, the whole thing was in terms of the Bears. All the hype was, the defense is good with Khalil Mack. They built around it, and with the offense, Trubisky's finally gonna hit his stride, and he didn't even do that. He didn't even come close to it. And as a result, Tariq Cohen, he went down. Everybody's numbers went down. Montgomery's numbers went down. I think the only person that really shined was Cordell Patterson, and that was as a return man. But it's like, dude, you've been doing that pretty much everywhere you've gone at this point. And the fact that he was the lone highlight of the team tells you how bad it's been for Chicago. So this offseason, granted they finished 8-8, but I'm gonna be honest, man. I know there's some Bears fans watching this too. You guys are gonna need to rebuild at least for another year or two because that offense needs work. And if I were you, I would look for a quarterback. If not in this year's draft, maybe next year, because Trubisky's not the future.
That's the thing. They need to bring in another quarterback just for some competition. But if I remember correctly, it's already been announced that they're committed to him. To keep on.
Yeah.
Starter next year. And I'm saying to that, it's man, that's what you're gonna do. Trubisky's got to go to work this offseason. He needs to go to work. Or the team's not going to work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's pretty sad, especially when they're in a position where they pretty much have to rely on Trubisky. So in 2020, if he doesn't get it together, that might be his last year in Chicago. It's gonna be crazy to see though. And by the way, quick note on the Vikings. By the way, next week when they play in their road playoff game, that's going to be the game where Kirk Cousins, like we're going to see, we've already seen the best and worst of Kirk Cousins, and it's not beautiful by any standards, but this playoff game, if he loses this and chokes on this stage again, that's going to be another disappointing Viking season where they've been successful, but again, they just couldn't win the big game when it mattered. It'll be disappointing. And moving on from that game.
We'll talk a little bit more about that later. One last thing, though.
What's up?
Is that I just want to make a comparison real quick,
All right, what's up?
And obviously, we'll talk about this team a little bit more later.
Right.
I just want to say that the Bears are what would have happened this year. Or, excuse me, the Bears are what the Ravens would have been if Lamar Jackson hadn't went to work this offseason.
That is true. I mean, the Bears team, if you look at the Bears team and the Ravens team, they're not far off. The only thing different is the quarterback. Everything else is pretty much, I would say, equal level or maybe a little bit above the Bears. But you're right, they're pretty much at the same class.
Yeah, and the organizations are built somewhat the same way with a defensive-minded thing. Yeah, and everyone was saying, Lamar Jackson didn't go to work over the summer, over the offseason. The Ravens are just going to be okay. And that's what happened to the Bears. Mitchell Trubisky didn't go to work, or didn't even work enough. The Bears are just okay. Lamar Jackson went to work, and we'll talk more about what the Ravens end up doing later.
Oh, absolutely, man. But yeah, the Bears are going to have to do some reassessing, and the Vikings are going to do a lot of praying, but we'll get to that. But the next game I want to talk about, and I know one you want to talk about, the Dolphins and the Patriots. What a way to close out the season for the Dolphins, mind you. 5-11 is an ugly record, but let's be honest. At the beginning of the season, we were talking about whether they were going to draft Tua Tagovailoa or whoever won the Heisman Trophy, number 1 overall in the draft. Now, not only did they go on a nice little run with Fitzpatrick at the helm at quarterback, they knock off the Patriots and essentially cut the Patriots' easy path to the Super Bowl pretty short. Granted, the Patriots have to play their game tomorrow, and we'll get to that later, but the fact that the Dolphins finished this strong, I think, sends a pretty strong message. And by the way, I would say if there's one thing that really has to be assessed in the offseason for the Dolphins, it's quarterback, because once again, I know, right? Because once again, you have Fitzpatrick who pulls out Fitz magic and beats the Patriots somehow, like in a crazy Week 17 spectacular finish. And once again, who's on the outside looking in? You know who I'm talking about. He's still. Oh wait, he's not even there anymore, is he? Oh wait, he's still there.
Talking about Josh Rosen?
Yeah.
Who's still sitting on the bench?
Exactly. Who's still sitting on the bench? Well, think about this. He was moved to Miami to take over the spot, and Flores saw enough in him early in the season to bench him. And with Fitzpatrick, they had a little bit of spark. Still, even though they lost some games, they were close games relatively. And they didn't look like a team that was just going to tank for the number 1 overall pick. They looked like a team that tried to compete. And the fact that they did it with a backup quarterback, with a journeyman, instead of Josh Rosen, who's supposed to be the savior. I think in the offseason, there's going to be a lot that has to be assessed with this team. But it gives them a positive note. And for the Patriots, oh boy, I've never seen a Patriots team look like this. And granted, this is the time when they usually get serious and they actually, they turn it up out of nowhere. But the thing is, there's no Gronk to save Brady this time. Julian Edelman is one hard hit away from being knocked out for good. And other than maybe James White in the backfield, Brady has nobody on offense. The only thing the Patriots can do is rely on that defense to carry them. And in the later half of the season, they started to get exposed a bit. That offense started turning the ball over. and that defense started to get tired from having to try to bail the offense out all the time. And so based off of this, I think we're looking at a team maybe trending up into the offseason with still some questions to answer, and another team that's got questions to answer, yet they still have a game to play. And they're playing a very dangerous Titan team. But what do you see in the Dolphins and the Patriots moving forward?
Well, I'm bittersweet about this game. Obviously, anytime the Patriots take an L,
right,
and lose out on a home field advantage in the playoffs, for at least like the second round, for at least the divisional round on,
mm-hmm.
It's a great day. It's a great day for America.
It is.
Now, the only thing is, for the Miami Dolphins, it's like at what cost? Because as you talked about, earlier in the season, this is a team that everyone thought was like, man, are they going to go 0-16? Is this team really about to do this? They need that number one pick. Are they going to go for Tua? Are they going to go for Joe Burrow? Whatever it is. Then winning 5 games, which I guess is cool and all, but like they fucked up their tank, bro.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow. Now Joe Burrow is definitely about to get drafted by Cincinnati.
And actually, no, you make a good point. Think about this.
He was hurt, so
you're right, man. And think about this. If they would have tanked successfully, Joe Burrow would have gone to a Miami team that has some decent weapons. Cincinnati has nobody except for Joe Mixon.
Right.
AJ Green would count, but AJ Green spends more time in the training room than he does on the field these days. And
even still, who knows if he will even be back next year.
That is a very good point. And actually, we should assess that as we get to Cincinnati. We should assess it. But I'll tell you what, man. It's going to be interesting to see what the Dolphins do with their quarterback situation. And as for the Patriots, Saturday's going to be. It's either going to be a cold day in hell in New England, or it's going to be one last surviving breath for the crumbling franchise. But we're going to see, though. Saturday's going to be a big day. And speaking of two teams that have the potential to really move forward, what about these Jets at 7-9, finishing the season at 6-2? Are you kidding me? 6-2, the latter half of the season. A Sam Darnold who didn't have mono, and a team that actually looked decent on both sides of the football when everybody was healthy. Of course, when C.J. Mosley did what C.J. Mosley does, and that defense really fell apart. But, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say, the Jets. Yeah, the Jets are a team to keep an eye on. I think moving forward next year. Sam Darnold, he definitely was playing improved football in the second half of the season. And you talk about CJ, but like CJ Mosley, if he's in there, I think their defense is even a little bit better, because he was injured for basically the whole year.
It is, man. Him and Jamal Adams really led that defense, and it's funny. It's funny looking back at that trade deadline. I'm glad that Baltimore went the way of Marcus Peters, because it came down to him and Jamal Adams. But the way Jamal Adams has been balling, I wouldn't have been mad at that pickup either.
I wouldn't have been mad at Jamal Adams either, because I think he's one of the best young safeties in the game right now. But yeah, and because of that, I think the Jets, if they can add some more pieces, improve that offensive line, and work on the back end of their defense a little bit more to build around Jamal Adams, I think the Jets might be a team to watch in 2020. A team that you want to keep your eye on, as long as Sam Darnold is playing well. I think the biggest question for the Jets this offseason is, what are they going to do with Le'Veon Bell?
It's so funny.
Underwhelming season.
Yes.
And, everyone's kind of on the fence about it. Is he going to come back? Is he not? I think Adam Gase is going to be back. I don't think that's a question. I think the Jets will be okay with him.
Right.
We'll see how that pans out for them.
Right.
But I think the biggest question for them is going to be, is Le'Veon Bell going to be in the Jets uniform next year, or are they going to try to find another running back to replace him?
The word as of now, at least that you'll maybe not read up on, but you may see rumors here and there, is that no, he won't be back. But if that's the case, I guess we can expect the Jets to maybe go out for a running back with one of their first picks.
They need to, because
yes,
Le'Veon in general had a year, and in general, one of the biggest problems for the Jets all season long is that they couldn't really they couldn't run the football very well. So that's something that they need to improve.
They definitely need to hit on that offensive line, and
that'll help Sam Darnold a lot too if they can get a running game going.
Absolutely, if they can get a running game and at least an offense and at least a line to help open up, like maybe more of the passing game and of course the running game, they should be good. Defense is solid, but offense definitely has work. The Bills, on the other hand, of course, we're going to get to them later since they are one of the playoff teams. We're going to get to them a little later.
Yeah, I haven't really been talking a whole lot about the playoff teams that we've came across so far.
Right.
We get to the playoffs. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of two teams, well, one team, the Chiefs, we're going to talk about when we get to our playoff round, but let's talk about the Chargers real quick. Now, finishing the year disappointing at 5-11. I have to be honest with you, I'm surprised Anthony Lynn was not one of the first coaches fired. But what it does tell me is that this is indeed Phillip Rivers' last season there, because there's no way you can have both of them still in the building after all these underwhelming seasons. And considering the Melvin Gordon holdout didn't help things at all, it's weird, man. Like, their defense is great on paper. Their offense was, it had potential to actually be pretty good. But they never lived up to expectations that, once again, they had coming into the season. Some people had the Chargers winning the AFC Championship game and going to the Super Bowl this year. Like, it sounds insane to say it now, but a lot of people had high hopes for this team. I thought they were like 9-7, 10-6 at best. They couldn't even get to 6 wins, man. 5-11 is a downgrade.
I mean, it's true. I mean, the Chargers, to me, are probably the most disappointing team this year.
Yes, and you know what?
The Browns are the Browns, right? And
right.
They were going to be big, but to me, the Chargers are the most disappointing team of the 2019-2020 season, because
I agree with that.
They're a team that I almost expected, without a doubt, would be able to continue on what they did last year and be a bona fide contender in the AFC West against the Chiefs. And damn, wins, bro. Like, what?
Like, it's so crazy to me, and this is how crazy it gets. They're talking about not just getting rid of Phillip Rivers, but his replacement being Cam Newton, and I'm like, are you kidding me? His coach just went to Washington. We're going to get to that in a little bit. But the fact that his coach just went to D.C., and now they're talking about shipping Cam Newton out of town, maybe sending him to L.A. as Rivers' replacement, I don't know where the Chargers are headed in the future, because Melvin Gordon's had his issues. Bosa had his problems. I have a feeling some of the guys on that team now are probably going to want to get paid. And that owner's pretty cheap as it is. That's why he's always had, issues with signing draft picks in the past. The Chargers is weird. Their future is kind of up in the air right now. It all depends on what the owner wants to do. But 2 back-to-back, like, really disappointing seasons, that's not good for the forgotten franchise in LA.
Yeah. And, with that, too, this reminds me of just, I think, a big story this season, 2019-2020.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the year that Father Time decided to show up? For not just Phillip Rivers, but a lot of aging quarterbacks. When you think about other teams in the NFL this year, you think about how Tom Brady's played this year.
Right.
Some of the other franchise quarterbacks, quote unquote, that maybe didn't live up to expectations this season.
Drew Brees. I mean, even though Drew Brees did good, he spent the majority of the season.
Like the only exception, you think about Matt Ryan with the Falcons and them having a down year.
Technically, you are right about Brees though, because he spent a good portion of the season on the bench if you thought about it because of injury.
That's true. He was injured for a little bit.
Yep. So like you said, I think
other quarterbacks. You got Andy Dalton.
Yep.
This year, Eli Manning playing his last games this year.
That's true. Dalton and Eli won't even be on their teams anymore.
Matt Stafford had some injury troubles this year in Detroit.
That's true.
Joe Flacco going down in Denver. There's a lot of aging quarterbacks everywhere in the league that were just next year, or just in general having a troubled season. And I think this year is a changing of the guard.
I think it's a big changing of the guard, and even a name like Cam Newton can be added to that list. And by the way, jumping onto our next game, speaking of teams that might be having a changing of the guard, looking at the Falcons and the Buccaneers, oh boy. Here's two non-playoff teams that we can analyze, because we're going to get to the Chiefs in our playoff section, but Falcons, Buccaneers, oh boy, okay. I know exactly where I want to start. I want to start off with the Buccaneers at 7-9. First of all, shout out to Brashad Perryman for getting himself a job somewhere else after Baltimore. It goes to show Joe Flacco destroyed many careers, but we'll get into that later. That's
Brashad actually did have a good year too.
I know, right? He absolutely did have a good year, and what's crazy to me is that what's absolutely insane to me is the fact that Jameis Winston ended the year with 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions. Who does that?
Jameis Winston, that's who does that. You baking him up, bro.
Oh man, and it's funny because even Bruce Arians kind of threw a little bit of shade at Winston, saying, "Hey, listen, we can win without the guy. We can win without 30 interceptions a year." And mind you, Jameis Winston was $30 million. He's not getting that in Tampa with the type of stats he's throwing up. Throwing for a lot of yards, but the problem is he just takes so many unnecessary risks. And the fact that the season ended with a walk-off pick six in overtime against the Falcons, it says everything you need to know about the guy. And you know what? I wouldn't be shocked if he's on a new team next year. I don't even think Tampa wants him at this point.
I mean, I'd be shocked if he's even a starting quarterback next year for a team.
That is a very good point, man. That is so true. And by the way, and you would probably know more about this, but the Falcons decided to keep Dan Quinn and keeping everybody else. They're not getting rid of anyone. Not any sort of change whatsoever. What happened? I mean, I guess maybe it was those fraudulent wins toward the end of the season for the Falcons that got ownership all excited and Arthur Blank all excited. But, oh man, really? They're going to keep everybody after that?
I have no clue what's going on with this team, this franchise, bro. There's a reason why I'm not a Falcons fan. Like, that day.
I can understand. I understand why your allegiance is still here in Baltimore. I get it. I totally get it, because Arthur Blank, that makes me scratch my head. Really, dude? This season didn't piss you off? You're not getting rid of anyone? Oh.
This is amazing, bro.
It is, and you know what?
Everyone underperformed. The Falcons had their... I guess the reason why they're doing it is because the Falcons had injury issues early in the year.
Right.
And they kind of got resolved as the season went on. But still, it's not like that they were looking like a contender.
Right.
They were winning some games, but they were winning games against some pretty low-level competition in the latter half of the year. So I don't understand why they want to keep everybody here. It makes sense. I think in some respects, part of the reason why they're doing it is because if they did drop some people, it might really screw them up money-wise. Because I think, didn't they just give Julio Jones money?
They did.
Here, and I know that Matt Ryan's still on a big contract, and they still got some others like Devonta Freeman and Deion Jones, Keanu Neal as well. But, man, it's a frustrating franchise.
It is, man. I absolutely get
it.
No
wonder that nobody's showing up to the bench to watch the Falcons play. Dang.
And, bro, speaking of frustrating franchises, going to the very next game, the Packers and the Lions. The Lions frustrate me every year because they always seem to have players capable of winning, some important games, actually going to the playoffs, maybe contending for the division, being more of a rival than just, the Packers and the Vikings going at it every year in the North. But, man, I thought the Lions were going to be a lot more this year, especially with Matt Patricia, who seemed to have a solid plan in place. But with really before Stafford even went down, the whole team just went in the toilet. That tie with the Cardinals didn't help. And from there, for some reason, after that tie game, it just spoke of Detroit football tradition of giving up leads. And I believe they blew like 6 leads this year. Like statistically.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, what do you make of Detroit? Because this was incredibly disappointing for them. 3-12-1. That is god awful.
I mean, they were a team this year that simply just couldn't close. And that was an issue all season long. They could not close. They couldn't seal the deal.
It's true, man.
That did them in close to the season.
I'll tell you.
You get in Bly or whatever his name is. He just couldn't do it. He wasn't about it. I think the other thing is though too that kind of was frustrating for fans just how things didn't work out for them with having some people on the team. Glover Quinn announcing his retirement right before the season started. That was a big part of their defense.
Oh, that's right. Right.
And then didn't they trade Darius Slay like halfway through the season or something like that?
They did. I forgot what team they traded him to, but they did get rid of him.
They traded somebody in their defense, or maybe it wasn't Darius Slay, but they traded somebody.
It was an important piece on the defense, though. You are.
Yeah. And I was just like, okay, so you're kind of giving up on your season, but yeah, there was some tough losses at the beginning of the season. I think really killed their spirit. Some games they should have won. The Cardinals game, the Packers game is another one. The one in Lambeau, where the rep kind of screwed them with multiple. I think it was hands to the face calls on Trey Flowers that put the Packers in scoring position to win the game. The last time they played. So, man. And even this was a game where the Lions were ahead and even with their basically second team, they still had a lead and were ahead in this game and couldn't close out the Packers. Packers came roaring back to win it. So.
Man, it's funny you talk about teams that were essentially giving up on the season. I'm looking at the second game, like the very next game right next to it, the Saints and the Panthers. Man, think about this. The Panthers are ready to give up on Cam Newton. They have They brought in Kyle Allen, a kid they drafted. He plays well first half of the season, and he gets the Panthers organization so excited that they're ready to move Cam Newton out of town. Then the kid starts to struggle, looks like a rookie. They start dropping games, and now they're at a point where they couldn't even contend for the playoffs. They end up at 5-11, like their season was in the toilet. And now they're looking at Cam Newton like, we may need you, but Cam may be on his way out of town. And as far as people out of town goes, their head coach is already out of town. They fired Ron Rivera. Ron Rivera is now in Washington, D.C. for the Redskins. I mean, I'm going to get into my opinion on that later on, but now that he's out, they're going to need a new coach. They're going to need a new staff because I think the offensive coordinator of the Panthers is going to go to D.C. with Rivera. So, essentially, the Panthers are going to have to essentially rebuild, and the question is, are you going to move Cam Newton out of town or not? Because Kyle Allen has shown that he's not quite ready, and I don't know if the Panthers want to give up on Cam just yet. But what do you think about that?
Should they give up on Cam?
Yeah. And he didn't look too hot this season either before the injury.
He didn't. I think it's a situation for the Panthers where I do think, regardless of what they want to do with Cam, they need to bring in another quarterback this offseason because
I agree.
And they're probably going to do it anyway because they already have to change everything with a new coach, with Rivera, with them firing Rivera anyway.
Right.
So they're probably going to bring in a new quarterback anyway, whether it be via the draft or bringing in somebody else, probably most likely the draft. But I think it's probably going to be a situation, with Carolina this year where They might give the reins to Cam to start the year, but they're going to draft somebody. And Cam will just be a placeholder at this point.
I can see that.
And if Cam does well, he keeps the job. If he doesn't, then they'll bring in whoever. But I think, if anything, this year proved that Kyle Allen is not the answer.
It's true. He is definitely not it. He looked like the answer in the earlier half of the season, but once he got exposed, it got ugly.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you. They're gonna have to really assess the quarterback situation for next year.
Yes.
Oh, and by the way, we are now to my favorite part of this: the Browns and the Bengals. Oh boy.
Also, before we get to that, stat check, by the way, or fact check.
Okay.
So, that the Lions traded was Quandre Diggs. They traded the Seattle Seahawks. He was one of their other safeties.
Ah.
And they had Quinn and Diggs on the back end of their defense, and then Glover Quinn retired and was released, and they traded Diggs to Seattle. That completely ruined the back end of their defense.
So their secondary was shot.
All year long.
Wow. Detroit had no chance then in that backfield. Damn.
Yeah.
That's a real bitch. And I don't even know why they're talking about drafting Chase Young from Ohio State, even though he's going back to school. I'm like, you don't want Chase Young. You need to go after a safety.
It's true.
Sure.
Anyway,
But,
on to the Bengals.
oh boy, the Bengals and the Browns. Now, first, let me assess the Bengals, because the Browns is probably gonna be my longest analysis on this. The Bengals, they did the tank successfully. They won Tank Bowl 2019. They get the honor of drafting Heisman winner LSU quarterback Joe Burrow, number 1 overall. And essentially they're going to do that because Andy Dalton is clearly not who he used to be. And even at his best, it wasn't all that spectacular. He didn't do too much. He went to the playoffs, but he never went too far in the playoffs. So now it is time for the organization to part ways, especially now that they have a new head coach in Zach Taylor, I believe his name is. 1 year under his belt, the worst of all 32 teams, worst record of all 32 teams. So now they can draft Joe Burrow and they can start to build this Bengals team that has potential to be something, at least on the offensive side of the ball. Defense, they need to... Oh, what's up?
They need some major changes.
They do. They need major changes, man. It's so bad too because they have a nice weapon in Joe Mixon, and they used to have some good receivers, but even like you mentioned before, AJ Green, we don't even know if he's going to be there anymore.
I mean, you're right, and okay. You know, I take that back. Tyler Boyd, nice too. He's the guy that put in their number 2.
Yeah, they're like he's not number 2. Yeah.
He's nice. I'll give him that.
Yeah, that's true.
And if Tyler Eifert is on the field, their tight end, he's the too. But he's always injured. I think this year was like the first year in like his NFL career Tyler Eifert played all 16 games.
Oh wow.
And of course it'd be the year that they only win 2 games.
Oh man, that's funny.
But yeah, then that defense is just completely trash. And that offensive line, goodness gracious. That offensive line, bro.
The offensive line needs serious help. Like, it's funny, like, even though they're going to get Joe Burrow, they probably should look at nothing but linemen after that.
It's true, because Joe Burrow is just going to be running for his life.
He is, and that protection he gets there at LSU is not going to be the same at Cincinnati, I can tell you that.
Nope.
And the Browns, by the way...
Especially not in the AFC North.
You got that right. Man, and speaking of the
with the Ravens blitzing every single play, the Steelers' defense being what it is, and the Browns, all I got to say is Myles Garrett.
I know, right? I tell you what, the Browns are gonna love getting him back because ever since he swung he took off Mason Rudolph's helmet and hit him in the head with it, they have really missed his presence on defense, and you can tell too.
And the sad truth is that if Myles Garrett is on the team for the second half of the season, there's a chance. Right. That they just might edge out the Titans for the 6th seed if Myles Garrett is playing. There's a chance.
It's true. It's true. Like their chances certainly
They
go
had
up
an
with
easy
him in the
schedule
game.
Second half of the year,
Right.
but they couldn't get the wins that they needed.
Oh yeah. When he's in the game, the chances of them winning increase. And it's funny because, like, seeing how they're trying to blow up things now with Freddie Kitchens being fired immediately after this loss to the Bengals.
Well, he needed to get fired.
Absolutely. The most shocking firing though was they got rid of John Dorsey, who's the man who got Odell Beckham Jr. there. He got Baker Mayfield there. He got Kareem Hunt. Like he built the offense and he built the defense. He was building something really good. So for Jimmy Haslam to once again go over his own head and fire a guy who actually built something decent for him is stupid, because now not only do you need a new coach, you need a new GM. You have to start from square one. Dorsey was decent enough to where if you would have just, Dorsey would have probably found a really decent coach, maybe like an Urban Meyer or maybe like a Mike McCarthy, somebody who actually can get those personalities in the locker room together.
Let's not forget that John Dorsey was still part of the decision of hiring Freddie Kitchens to begin the season. So do you really trust he would have hired a good head coach?
That is true. That is a good point. All I do know is whoever they hire next, he's probably going to be like coach, general manager, like the way Ron Rivera is in Washington. I feel like that's going to happen in Cleveland. It's weird. Like for that job, by the way, I would say Urban Meyer is probably number one. Because even though he comes from the college ranks, still, if he comes into a place like this in Cleveland where he's already been successful in the state of Ohio, a lot of his former players are on that team right now. And he's coached against Baker Mayfield, and he's coached against some of the other better players on the team. He would know how to get those personalities in check, considering he himself has a personality.
But would he really be able to get it in check, or would it just be even more volatile than it already is? Because that's really the biggest thing about the Browns right now is that, Dorsey, you can talk about that he built a team of good players.
Right.
But he also built a team of very, very volatile personalities. You look at Baker Mayfield and the type of guy he is. You look at Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham, Kareem Hunt, Myles Garrett, Sheldon Richardson, the type of people that are on this team, Greedy Williams. Bro, he literally built a team of, like, the most just, like, rambunctious people you can find in the NFL that have talent.
He was the reason Josh Gordon had a job for so long.
It's true.
And I think he drafted I think he drafted Manziel too.
He might have. Or was that before Dorsey's time? I don't know.
But either way, you're right though. Like the squads he's put together are good, but their heads are just not in the right place.
Oh no.
Oh. And
all they were missing is Ndamukong Suh, and then they would have had everybody.
It's so true. The Browns have a lot to assess, and the Bengals have a lot to assess. And moving on from them, two more teams that have a lot to assess. But at least the Broncos have some hope. The Raiders not so much though. Here's what I like about the Broncos. They have Drew Lock, who's a solid rookie quarterback. He clearly could work with them in the offseason. Didn't have a whole season to work with, so he looks like.
I was very impressed with Drew Lock this year.
Absolutely, and I was pretty high on him before he even started playing, and I was surprised when he wasn't. But Elway did right by letting Flacco and Brandon Allen play before him, so he did well. And he can improve next year, and they can still build around him. So Elway, he has something to work with in Denver. The Raiders, however, did the ending get ugly. Not only did they drop their final home game and blow a lead in that final home game to where the fans booed them, threw beer at them. One fan actually ripped the seat out of the stadium and walked out of the stadium with it. Marshawn Lynch is in the parking lot giving shots of tequila to people, telling them all to calm down. Like, Like the Raiders pissed off their own fans in their final game in their house in that shithole of a stadium in Oakland, and go out in the regular season by losing by 1 point to the Broncos.
The game that they needed too.
I know, right? A game that they needed.
No one that got in because the Titans won, but they needed to win this game to have a chance at the wild card spot.
It just goes to show, like, it was surprising the Raiders hung around as long as they did, because if you look at that team up and down, they have work to do. Burfict is because Vontaze Burfict is probably not even going to last all of next season.
That's reminding. That's who the Browns are missing too, by the way.
Oh yeah, they're definitely missing that guy.
Could you imagine if Burfict was in that locker room?
Oh boy. Oh man. It's funny because
back to the Raiders though. But yeah, they got some questions, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They need to overhaul everything on the defensive side of the ball. There really isn't a whole lot on that side for them. The offense is okay. I mean, Josh Jacobs did a great job. He might be. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you have anybody else in the AFC who I may be missing, but Josh Jacobs will probably be the offensive rookie of the year for the AFC.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Darren Waller had a breakout year this year.
Wow, man.
By the way, let's have some praise for Darren Waller, bro.
That is pretty good.
I remember he was in Baltimore, bro, and he couldn't get himself together because he kept getting suspended.
Right.
He never on the field, and he couldn't block either because he converted from receiver. So I'm happy for him. I'm happy that he got himself together and he had a great year with Oakland this year.
I believe he was like their leading receiver for a little while.
I think he ended the year, I believe, as their leading receiver.
Wow. That's crazy how Perryman and Waller went on to different teams and actually had success.
Right?
Oh boy, I don't know if that speaks to Flacco or what, but man, oh man, I'm happy for Waller, and you know what? It says that next year they're probably going to invest a lot in that guy, and they should. That's a piece you want on your offense, especially at this stage.
Just to say it, because I just want to make sure this is known. So Darren Waller this year caught 90 passes.
Right.
1,145 yards.
Jeez.
Bro.
That's crazy.
Man.
That's so crazy considering where he was like a year or two ago.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of progression. But yeah, big ups to him though. The Raiders still have a lot to build around, but at least they have a nice piece on offense with him and with Jacobs to work with. Carr, I don't know if he's going to be their quarterback of the future, but at least for now, he's sustainable. But moving on though. And by the way, I just want to point out the Cardinals this year, like a rookie I was impressed with was Kyler Murray, because when you see him under center, like he's the same height as us, you know what I mean? So like the fact that he's able to play the quarterback position and do it very well at the NFL is remarkable, because even with a 5-10-1 record, you saw flashes with the offense, and you saw the rise of Kenyon Drake toward the end of the season. And
yeah, I mean, he had his team in games. Like, I mean, the Cardinals, they lost 10 games, but a lot of those games, they were in them.
Absolutely. They were even in the game when they played the Ravens, I believe. Like, we barely beat them. Yeah.
It was only a one-possession game.
It's weird. It's weird, too, because I remember Cliff Kingsbury when he was Texas Tech quarterback. I didn't think he would translate well as a head coach. I thought maybe he was still a coordinator because he didn't have a winning record as an offensive coordinator at whatever school he was at before here. I think at Texas Tech. But he didn't have a winning record there when he was kind of coaching. And for him to come into the NFL and at least have not the best record, but at least a record that says, okay, we could work with your team, it says something. They need to work on that defense, though. That defense is shot. They have nobody. No Honey Badger. They're probably not going to have Chandler Jones. They don't have Robert M'Diche because he's too fat and out of shape. He was the draft pick that never panned out. So they have some... And
Pat
plus,
Pete getting old, too.
Wait, who else?
Pat Pete getting old, too.
Ah, that's right. And also, they got rid of Suggs. They got rid of Terrell Suggs, too, which says a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, the Cardinals need to fix, and the Rams. The Rams are the biggest disappointment because they picked up Jalen Ramsey with the intention of, okay, we pick up Ramsey, our defense is there, offense Gurley will come around once the arthritis in his knee doesn't cause his knee to inflame. And Jared Goff, unfortunately, had to shoulder a lot of the offense because Todd Gurley had knee issues. And because of that, that whole team fell apart. Goff never quite lived up to expectations. Gurley never quite lived up to his expectations because of injury. And that defense, they fell apart and they gave up. And, oh man, it just got pretty ugly for the Rams. I don't know what they're going to do, though. I think a lot of their key players are probably going to end up leaving. What do you think?
For the Rams, I mean, I think people might stay around. I mean, I think the biggest problem with them is how they. Yeah, I think the biggest problem with them is how they blew up the farm for Jalen Ramsey, and I think that that's going to affect them for years to come. That they're probably perpetually going to be at like this 9-7, kind of not quite as good as they were last year level, because they won't have the capital in the draft to keep pushing themselves to build forward. And then once they pay Jalen Ramsey, they're not going to have any money anymore because they got to pay Jalen Ramsey. They already paid Todd Gurley and they paid Jared Goff. So that's a lot of their money gone. Aaron Donald, too. So that's a lot of money that they got on the books already going to just a handful of players. Add in the fact that, like, I mean, already because of that, like, a lot of their team is just kind of like some of what they did on their defense this year is almost like patchwork when you think about they brought in Eric Weddle, they brought in Clay Matthews, two old heads that they just needed to fill a spot. But old players is not what you need in this day and age because everyone was trying to get younger and faster, you know?
It's true. It's absolutely true, man. So, you know what? I think if the Rams can certainly address a lot of the issues they have, I think they can maybe turn it around. But what do you think?
I think the Rams are just going to plateau right now. I think they're going to be going. Because, I mean, what? They sold their first round draft picks for this year's draft and next year's draft.
Oh,
this year and next year, and potentially the season after that, the next 2 or 3 years of them without top draft picks. You know, unless they can finesse their way of getting those picks back through trades, I think they're going to plateau and be right where they are right now for the next couple of years.
Oh, man, it's going to be tough for Rams fans. Speaking of tough, Giants, Eagles, we can assess the Eagles for our wild card part, but for the Giants, 4-12 is not only disappointing, it goes to show how they really handled the Eli Manning exit. They could have handled it a lot better. I don't know if throwing Daniel Jones in the fire as quickly as they did was a smart move because they wasted him. They wasted Saquon Barkley. The defense, they actually had a couple of pieces traded, including a top corner of theirs traded. Well, not even traded, released and then picked up by the Saints. But yeah, like, I felt like the Giants were at least going to be decent this year, but man, their offense never came about. They still have a lot of work to do, and Daniel Jones still has a lot of work to do. Now that Eli Manning's gone, they need to make sure they have a suitable backup because I don't know if he's even going to be the answer. But what do you think about the Giants moving forward?
I mean, honestly, I think the Giants did this season about what I expected them to. I mean, what it's worth, yeah. I mean, Saquon Barkley did spend some time this year. But at the same time, yeah, I thought they did exactly what I thought they were going to do, which is a team that would get maybe about 5, end up with 4 wins. You know? I kind of had a feeling that this was going to be the year that Eli was going to fall off the shelf, and you know that's why they drafted Daniel Jones in the first place. And then I honestly think it was a good thing getting Daniel Jones in there this year. Because I think that even though he was running for his life because the Giants' offensive line absolutely sucks.
Right.
I think it'll be good. I think it was good experience for him, and I think that for the most part, yeah, he's had his struggles, but considering what he had to work with that offensive line, I think he performed enough to give the team hope for the future. Similarly, Drew Lock, I think, um, and as long as they can start putting some good, strong bodies in front of them in the offensive line and improve their defense, because I mean that was the biggest thing. Their defense, they lost a lot of pieces, not just in the middle of the season with trades, but also like before the season, they lost a lot of people. So
It's
there's a
true.
lot of building that they need to do on that side of the ball. But I think that they have a good thing going here with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley to build around. And not to mention too, they also had a lot of other injuries. I think to the receiving core too. I think they lost Sterling Shepard for a little bit. Obviously, they lost Odell Beckham.
Right.
And then yeah, and then Golden Tate was missing for a few games at the beginning of the season. So yeah, I think the Giants will be fine. I think they're still another year or two away from being. Well, actually, no. I will say I will take that back. I think the Giants are a year away, just because of the fact that their division sucks. They're a year away from actually being able to contend.
You do make a good point. Their division is so bad they could easily turn it around within a year. So
Yeah, I would say 2 years for them to actually be like a good team, but honestly, I think if they make the right moves this offseason, they'll probably be competitive in their division next year. Because let's be honest, that sucks.
they do. And at 4-12, they're gonna get a pretty nice draft pick out of that. So something good came out of the season. Our next game is Titans Texans, but we're going to talk about them in the wild card round. But then that brings us to the Ravens and Steelers. The Ravens ended up beating the Steelers' first team with the Ravens backups, despite RG3 throwing for 96 yards and throwing a fluky pick. But nonetheless, still a big win for the Ravens. It crushes the Steelers. It puts a dagger in their season, considering they were trying to scrape and scrap along with two quarterbacks who really showed they weren't quite ready for the next level, because Duck Hodges is not the answer. Mason Rudolph's not the answer. That means they're going to have to turn to old-ass Big Ben when he comes back next year from his injury. And that does not bode well for Pittsburgh. And even though they finished 8-8, and even though they had that nice trade where they got Minkah Fitzpatrick and it upgraded their defense, and he was an immediate impact right away, kind of like how Marcus Peters was in Baltimore, it still didn't provide enough of a spark for the Steelers to make it to the playoffs. And with that being said, they have a lot of needs to fill. They need some more weapons on offense. James Conner is still good at running back, but they need help on offense. They also need a suitable quarterback for Ben Roethlisberger, because, like I said before, Mason Rudolph, not the answer. He got the shit beaten out of him and was never the same after that concussion he suffered in Baltimore. And Duck Hodges, he hasn't shown the potential to be a decent backup. He's done okay, but is it like better than Rudolph? I don't know. Maybe a little bit, but I don't know. But yeah, they definitely have some answers for the offseason, because the Steelers are still a decent team. They could get 10 next year, but this year was a big disappointment for them. But what do you think?
So I think for the Steelers, or if I'm a Steelers fan, which thank God I'm not,
Right.
but if I'm a Steelers fan, honest jokes aside, I'm not worried if I'm a Steelers fan. Because,
Right.
Ben Roethlisberger, yeah, he's getting old, and everything. But I think that when he comes back, that their offense will be better, with better health in general, not just for Ben Roethlisberger, but a healthy Juju, a healthy James Conner. They'll be okay. And their defense obviously is stellar. I think it sucks for them, though, without Minkah Fitzpatrick. That means they don't have a first-round pick in this year's draft. That kind of sucks. But at the end of the day, I think Minkah Fitzpatrick will probably be worth it, though. I think Devin Bush is good on the defense. I think the defense is going to be fine. their only questions are on offense. And if you're telling me that without your starting quarterback, without your number one running back, and if Benny Snell looking pretty good down the stretch, then and then now Juju for a lot of the second half of the season, and they still finished 8-8. I'm a Steelers fan. That's not a bad deal. Yeah, you missed the playoffs, but I'd like to think that with Ben Roethlisberger in there, James Conner, and Juju, they probably get one or two more wins, which is all you need to get into the playoffs. So I think the Steelers will be fine. But here's the big question. Talk about getting a backup quarterback. Talk about Devlin Hodges not being enough. Talk about Mason Rudolph kind of not playing very well.
Right.
Let me put this on you real quick.
All right.
Backup quarterback. We kind of said this already about somebody being very surprised if somebody is a starting quarterback next year.
Mm-hmm.
What if? Hear me out.
Okay.
If they got Jameis Winston to be the backup quarterback.
Oh, the backup?
Oh yeah.
I mean, okay, backup to Big Ben, yes, okay. For some reason I was thinking the other two, but to the backup to Roethlisberger, absolutely. Yes. And you know why that makes sense? Because not only will the Buccaneers not want him, the Steelers want a quarterback like Winston who's gonna gun it all the damn time. They want somebody like that. Yeah, they need that.
It's a good fit.
It is a good fit. Even with 30 picks, you still get 30 touchdowns and you get over 5,000 yards. That's not bad. You can work on the turnovers. Like, there's no way he's going to be throwing 30 next year. And if that's the case, then he really shouldn't be in the NFL.
I'm just saying, it'd be a good fit. If James is okay with being a backup quarterback, and if Tampa doesn't want him.
I think he would be all right, considering the fact that it's Ben Roethlisberger, and at this stage of the game, he's not going to last a full season. So Jameis is like, okay, like, at least in his mind, he'll probably think, okay, I'll see the field at some point. But you're right, it is something to look out for.
The other deal for Jameis could be like, hey, for all we know, Big Ben might retire in another year or two, so it could still be my team eventually.
Or he might pull an Andrew Luck and retire in the preseason. You never know.
Exactly. So it's it's not a bad idea.
Another team.
Not that I want it to happen, but it's not a bad idea.
And you know what? Speaking of teams who are also going to be rebuilding, maybe looking for a whole bunch of new pieces, the Cowboys and the Redskins both gone from playoffs. Of course, the Redskins been gone. They're 3-13. They've already begun their rebuild, but the Cowboys. By the way, as of today, the reports are that Jason Garrett will no longer be with the team moving forward, but no one from the Cowboys wants to confirm it for some strange reason. Almost like Jerry Jones doesn't want to really let go of him. So it's like the Cowboys have the team to be in the NFC Championship game. They have the team to kick top NFC teams in the face every year. But Jason Garrett was just not the answer at coach. So finally, they didn't resign him. His contract ended after the game Sunday, and they're not going to be bringing him back. So the Cowboys, they're going to have to really assess their team, because even though they have the team in place, they need a coach. They need a head coach more than anything. And speaking of coaches, the Redskins have already made their decision. They fired their coach, Jay Gruden, way, way earlier in the season. When they realized the season was gone, I think like 6 games into the regular season, they realized it was gone. And they fired him. And now they have their coach in Ron Rivera, who used to be the head.
I can't get over that shot of Jay Gruden getting and smoking some weed, bro. What a time.
It just.
Jay Gruden never changed, bro. Never changed.
It just goes to show how stressful that Redskins job was.
Dude, fuck the Deadskins, bro.
Man, I'll tell you what, they're going to be dead in the water, because Ron Rivera is not only going to be coach, he's going to be general manager, and that's not a good sign. What it does bring the question, though, is are they going to be able? Is he going to be able to get along with Dwayne Haskins? Because I know Haskins. I heard he didn't get along with Urban Meyer, so that's kind of why they didn't bring him in. But If Ron Rivera doesn't like Haskins as his quarterback, is he going to ship Cam Newton all the way to DC? And if he does that, then he's really going to destroy that team. So that franchise is dead in the water. I don't see the Redskins really progressing this year, even though they have a high draft pick. Let's be honest. They get Chase Young from Ohio State's going back to school, and I think he's going back to school because he doesn't want to be a Redskin, and I don't blame him. So it's like, who do they really get? You know, like they can't do anything this year to be better next year.
Yeah, I'm in wait and see mode with the Redskins.
Yeah, same here, man. I'm not ready to trust them.
For what it's worth, Chase Young, as of earlier today, has declared for the draft.
Oh, he did? Oh, so he did declare. I heard stories that he was going to stay in school. Okay.
Earlier today, he officially announced that he's declaring for the draft.
Well, then, it looks like we know where he's going to go. He's going to be top because Joe Burrow's...
January 3rd, by the way.
It's funny because Joe Burrow is going to be number 1. Chase, and I think the Redskins pick like number 3 or number 2. Wherever they pick, they're definitely going to pick Chase Young. I know that for a fact because Haskins wants him. Terry McLaurin from Ohio State wants him. Some other people on that team want him. So they're going to be heavy favorites to get him. I think the only other team that wants him more is Detroit. So that's going to be something to look at for the draft at least moving forward. And
Washington picks first, so
that is true. So it's likely he's likely going to Washington. You're right.
Yeah.
Since they are picking first. So speaking of teams that are going to be high in the draft, the Colts and the Jaguars, man. First of all, the Colts 7-9 is actually really good for them because let's remember Andrew Luck bailed on his team before the season started. In preseason, he tried to play. And I guess he realized that his body was just not going to be able to take the punishment that the season was going to bring him, and he abruptly retired. So Jacoby Brissett had to step up. The rest of the team had to step up. And they were in the playoff hunt for a good portion of the season. And even though they ended 7-9, if anything, I'm not making big changes here. I'm not going to fire Frank Wright, the head coach, because if anything, he worked with the pieces he had for this year, because he thought he was getting a healthy Andrew Luck, and he didn't get that. So for what he was able to work with, he got the team 7-9, so that's commendable. But if you look on the other side of the coin with the Jaguars, they've already fired GM Tom Coughlin. For some reason, Doug Marrone didn't lose his job. I thought he would lose his job along with the GM that hired him. But it seems as if the Jaguars want to make some changes, but they don't quite know what to do. They gave a lot of money to Nick Foles, but Nick Foles has been trash. Gardner Minshew has been decent, so it's like, do you make him the starter? Do you make him work for it next year? You know, what are you going to do there? So questions on both sides. More of an upside for the Colts though than the Jaguars. The Jaguars seem to just be stuck right now at the moment. But what do you think about them both?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it. The Colts, for them to be what they were this year, for them to get to where they were, and they had some injury issues too a little bit throughout the year as well. I think, the Colts were honestly quite impressive this year, and I think Frank Wright did an excellent job coaching that football team. I think the biggest question about the Colts is, do you like Jacoby Brissett? Do you like him? Do you want to keep him? Is he the guy?
Yeah. You know what? He did decent enough this year to where if I was GM or coach, I would let him compete for the job next year. I would at least let him compete, you know?
Oh, yeah. I think he definitely deserves to compete.
Absolutely.
That's sort of the biggest question I have, for them at this point. I think that they need to improve some things on the defensive side, in the front seven, and in the secondary. Particularly the secondary, though. I mean, Malik Hooker's really nice. I like Malik Hooker. Just some other spots in there. For the Jaguars, reminds me of another old guard quarterback that kind of melted away this year. Nick Foles.
Yes.
Nick didn't really didn't really get it done this year. So they go to Gardner Minshew, who is another one that I asked the question, do you like him? But the Jaguars got a whole list of other issues going on with that team. I'm pretty sure that team is about to get blown up. That Jaguars team.
It is, man. I think, and you know what? With Tom Coughlin being fired, I think they're on the way to blowing it up.
Yeah, I think they're about to hit the reset button. Honestly, just being a fan of it, I'm just looking at some of the players on the team like, all right, who do I like and where should they go? Like, where should Calais Campbell go? Where should Miles Jack go? Where should Yannick Ngakoue go? I'm gonna be honest, because low key, because this is kind of rumored as like potentially someone that they were interested in being a Ravens fan. I kind of want Yannick Ngakoue on a Ravens uniform. But we'll see.
Yes.
The Jaguars probably actually won't get rid of him because he's still in his rookie deal. But we'll see. Some of the receivers too. I mean, D.D. Westbrook's okay. DJ Chark, I really like him.
Yes.
Leonard Fournette, is he going to be back next year? I mean, I know he had an up and down year. So there's some questions about the Jaguars and what they're going to do. AJ Bouye, defensive back, cornerback.
Oh, yeah, one of my favorites.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see what the Jaguars do, but I'm pretty sure that team's about to get blown up. Surprised they kept the coaches, though, Doug Marrone and everything.
Yeah, I thought Doug Marrone was on his way out with Coughlin as soon as I heard the firing. I'm like, really? Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, we'll see what happens with that team.
And really, that's it, because the only other two teams are the 49ers and Seahawks. But yeah, man, as far as
the playoffs.
Absolutely takes to the playoffs. Who's one team you're gonna look out for out of all the losers in 2020? Like, who's your team to watch if you had to pick one?
As we were just talking about the Jaguars with them being blown up, but I think the teams that I'm very intrigued to see next year, to see if they might be. I remember recently reading up on something that was saying that like every year there's a streak going on where every year there's a new first year playoff team that wasn't in the playoffs the year before.
Right.
So I'm not gonna make like a bold prediction.
But
like I'm gonna just say as a team that wasn't really in playoff contention, that I'm looking for, in some respects hoping for, is in the conversation next year. I'm looking at the New York Jets.
Interesting. Okay.
I like the Jets. I do.
You know what? The Jets looking pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. They're looking pretty good. 6-2 back half of the season. I mean, it's hard to not pay attention to that. So I actually agree with you. The Jets are my team. I would look at too. The only other team I say I would pick, if I had to pick one, let me just scroll through real fast. Because there are some ones I'm interested in, like the Dolphins. I want to see what they do at quarterback. I want to see what the Buccaneers do with Jameis. I want to see what the Chargers do. But out of all, actually, a team I'm interested in, I want to see what the Cardinals do. Because the Cardinals didn't have a terrible season. Even though they were 5-10-1, it wasn't too bad. I want to see what their second-year rookie offense is going to look like.
Yeah.
That's another team I'm going to look at. So definitely the Jets and the Cardinals are two I'm definitely looking out for. And folks...
Yeah, and I mean, and there's a lot of teams that could potentially have a good bounce back here. I mean, another couple teams that we loosely mentioned, kind of because they're divisions, both of these teams play in divisions that are generally very tight and have low records. You look at the New York Giants and them potentially turning things around, and also even for sake of argument, the Colts.
That's true.
What do you think about it? The Colts were literally just a couple of games out of the division lead this year. So
not bad at all, man. But hey, as we look at those teams and as we follow those teams, it's definitely going to be good to look at them in the off season. But one of the best parts about the NFL is that we have playoffs, man, and it actually starts tomorrow, 4:30. First one up is the Buffalo Bills and the Houston Texans in Houston. I love both these teams. I would say 10-6. Okay, two 10-6 teams that aren't bad. I would say the Bills' offense is coming around. Like, the defense is good, but the offense to me is still a little bit suspect because Josh Allen right now is resembling more of a running back than more of a quarterback at the moment. But still, that defense is good enough to keep them in games. The Texans, same thing. Their offense is good. I would say the Bills' defense maybe a little bit better, but they get J.J. Watt back for this game. Who do you see winning this one? Because right now I'm kind of leaning toward Buffalo.
You know, I really hate this one. This game for me, games wild card weekend. The toughest game. You need to pick a team. I really don't know yet, man. Because yeah, I do like the Bills because Josh Allen shows some improvement year one to year two. Still got a ways to go. It wasn't great. I like Devin Singletary, their running back. He had a great year as a rookie, but they didn't even really start putting it on him and giving him the carries until late in the season.
Right.
Gore is a good complementary piece too. I like what Buffalo's got, and their defense is one of the best in the league. And I like John Brown too. But man, on the Texans side, I like Deshaun Watson. And the defense gets J.J. Watt back. And DeAndre Hopkins is one of the best receivers in the game, if not the best.
Right.
So it's a tough matchup. It's going to be close. I mean, it's playoff time, so everything's going to be tough matchups. But I legitimately think that both these teams are evenly matched. And the reason why I say that too, because even as much as great as Deshaun Watson is, and as good and as many good things as he's done this year, he does kind of. I mean, I'm just thinking about the last couple of times he's played some playoff games. They quite show up. Like I'm thinking about last year, the Texans really laid an egg at home with the Colts.
They did.
In the wild card round, and I keep thinking about that game, and I keep thinking about how, in general, that Texans team just didn't show up.
Right. It's true,
but
man.
At the same time, it's not like the Bills are a team that does show up in big situations. They've lost some important games this regular season, even the Bills.
Right.
And the last time they were in the playoffs 2 years ago, I think they mustered all of 3 points against the Jaguars.
Oh, man.
Back when Tyrod Taylor was still the quarterback. So it's really tough because these are two teams that that both on paper are talented. At the same time, are not good enough to win the big games sometimes. But we're in a game where both of the teams are playing against each other, so somebody has to win. And who do I go with? I guess I'll pick the Texans.
Right.
I don't know. I guess I'll pick the Texans just because they were here last year. They're at home, and they get J.J. Watt back.
The spread is -2.5, so it's a close game.
Oh yeah,
still very close.
To me, it's the closest game of the week.
Absolutely. The second game is going to be a good one too. The Titans and Patriots. What sucks about this is that this takes place in New England, and even though it's a wild card game for the Patriots, the only thing is, historically in wild card games, the Patriots have a losing record. They don't do very well. I want to pick the Titans because they have looked like the better team at the moment. The Patriots have looked overrated. Tom Brady's looked old. He has no weapons around him. Edelman is pretty much shot. They have no Gronk to help. They have no defensive. Well, they have some defensive help, but the defense gets tired when the offense can't do anything. So I would love for the Titans to win. But because of the playoffs and because the Patriots always do this, where they just turn it up out of nowhere despite having nothing to work with, I want to pick the Patriots. I would love to pick the Titans, but I'm going to pick the Patriots at home because I feel like they're just going to pull out magic again. What do you think about this?
I 100% agree. I do think the Titans are a better football team all the way around, but I think the Patriots are going to pull something out of their ass to get the W.
I know, right? It always seems like they do it every year. Every year they look down and out, and then they end up pulling off something.
Yeah, and just in general, like as talented as the Titans are, I think they could probably use another year of seasoning before they can really take it to a big team when in a needed game. You know.
Absolutely. That's going to be good. That's going to be like the must-watch game for me tomorrow. I'm going to watch both, but that one, I'm going to be glued to the TV from start to finish. And then Sunday, oh boy. The Vikings go on the road to New Orleans to face the Saints in a rematch that has not taken place in the playoffs since that miracle that Kirk Cousins and the offense pulled out of their ass at the last minute to beat the Saints. This is the rematch the Saints want. You know what, as much as I would love for Minnesota to go on the road and shock everybody and cause everyone to go stir crazy because Kirk Cousins finally won a game in primetime, I'm going to pick the Saints because they're at home. They have been in this situation. They know how to win in this situation. The team is good with or without Drew Brees. And quite frankly, Dalvin Cook is shot for the Vikings. And once he's shot, it's in Kirk Cousins' hands. And once it's in Kirk Cousins' hands, that's when the game just goes downhill. But I'm picking the Saints for this one. But what do you think?
I'm also picking the Saints for this one. I still don't trust the Vikings in big games.
I'm with you.
Plain and simple. I don't trust the Vikings in big games. I'm picking the Saints.
And in our final game, we have the Seahawks and Eagles. Oh, and they're in Philly for this too. You know what? I'm going against the grain here, even though the Seahawks are banged up. And it's to a point where they have called upon Marshawn Lynch to come off his couch and help out. I am going to pick the Seahawks on the road because I believe the Eagles are going to choke. This is the first time Carson Wentz is in a playoff game, starting in a playoff game. So I think he's going to choke at home. And I think the Seahawks steal one. What do you think?
I mean, I think the Seahawks are going to win this one too. I mean, you talk about the Seahawks being injured and everything, but let's not forget the Eagles are hurt to shit too. They're on like their 8th string running back and are working with a wide receiving core that was the people that I ordered my Wendy's from the other night. Both teams are hurt to shit, and I'm going to pick the Seahawks because simply I trust Russell Wilson more than I trust Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I'm feeling the same way, man. And before we get out of here, let's go ahead and break down the 4 teams that are going to have a bye week this week. The 4 teams that are going to be sitting at home figuring out who they're going to play next week. And let's start off with the Green Bay Packers. What do you think what would you say is your assessment? Hold on, let me pause this. What is your assessment of Green Bay? Because mine right now is pretty simple. Aaron Rodgers hasn't looked his best, but that team around him is good enough to where they can be sustainable and go far because they have a running game. They don't have Amon Green back there, but they have somebody pretty close to it. And they have a decent enough offense to where, they can pull some magic if Aaron Rodgers needs to. The Green Bay Packers are going to be dangerous in the divisional round. I'm not, depending on who they face, whether it's Philly, whether it's the Seahawks, whether it's the Saints, whether it's the Vikings, it's gonna be ugly for no matter what team has to face them. I think they're going to be one of the teams that are going to be dangerous when no one expects them to be. But what do you think?
I mean, I can see that. I mean, early in the season, when the Packers started to turn things around, they won some games. I considered them a true contender this year. But I think as the season went on and they started to some of the faults,
right,
they started to get exposed a little bit. I started to be a little less high on the Packers. And I think they're good. I think the Packers are good. I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to bet the house on them yet. I don't know if I'm ready to bet the house on them yet.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not.
Another year.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like this year, I thought they would look unstoppable, but that actually has gone to some other teams this year that have looked pretty unstoppable. like our second NFC team sitting at home, the 49ers. Man, the rebuild that John Lynch put together, his master plan has finally come about, and it's paid off this year. He's only lost one game, like overall in his division. Like, the guy pretty much has everything on lock. I would say the defense is looking scary. Oh shit, the defense is looking scary. The offense with Jimmy G, like, Garoppolo's looking better. They need some more receivers, though, because Pettis hasn't quite hit his stride yet. But I would say the 49ers...
I like their receivers, though, because they have Emmanuel Sanders.
That's true.
He's Goodwin, too.
That is true. They do have some decent receivers, like some good ones.
Samuel, they drafted this year, too.
Absolutely. Even though Pettis didn't come along, those guys certainly have, and it's certainly come a long way for Jimmy Garoppolo. I still think the 49ers are going to be the team to beat in the NFC, though. Like, on that side of the conference, I think they're the team to beat. What do you think? What do you think about them?
I mean, I agree. I mean, they won all the top games they needed to win. I mean, they've looked like they look like the most well-rounded team in the NFC for sure. Top to bottom. I think they're going to be a tough team to beat.
To be honest, I think we might be looking at a team that's going to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. Like, I think on that side of the bracket, I'm thinking the 49ers are going to take it.
That's your pick? That's your NFC Super Bowl pick?
Yep, my NFC side of the pick, I think the 49ers are going all the way.
I see.
Looking pretty good.
And then, it's a good pick. I'm not going to lie. It's a good pick.
Absolutely.
My pick is different. But for what it's worth, your pick technically did beat my NFC pick during the season. My NFC team that I'm picking for the Super Bowl to be the representative is the New Orleans Saints.
Oh, wow.
I'm still picking the Saints. I'm still on their train. I picked the Saints last year. I picked the Saints the year before, so this will be my third straight year of picking the Saints.
Well, think about it, man. Their first game, their first game was like game of the year. So if we get that rematch,
yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm expecting for a 49ers Saints NFC Championship game, and I think this time it's not gonna. The result won't be the same as it was in the regular season.
Interesting. That's going to be very interesting to look at too. I'm certainly looking forward to that. And looking on the AFC side of the bracket, starting first of all with the Chiefs, who are going to be sitting at home again. I mean, if we're going to be honest, technically this is the season where Mahomes is going to shine because he has yet to have that shining in the playoff moment other than beating the Ravens in the first round. He has to go far this year, and the Chiefs have to go far because expectations are through the roof. And they've done very well. They ended up 12-4, undefeated AFC, but still, you would think technically on paper, even though the Ravens have been the better AFC team, considering what Kansas City did last year, they pretty much have to go back to the championship. Like, they have to go on a tear, don't you think?
I think Kansas City is going to be a dangerous team. I really do. I think the way the Chiefs ended the season, I mean, Pat Mahomes didn't really have, statistically at least, as good of a year as he had last year, but I thought down the stretch, that Chiefs team started to put things together and started to get really, really scary.
Definitely, I agree with that, man. And
I think the defense even started to put some things together too. And I think the Chiefs are a really scary team.
They're looking like it on the AFC. I think they could at least go to the championship game, maybe.
Yeah.
And looking at our final AFC teams, save the best for last. The Baltimore Ravens, this is what we're going to leave on. In my analysis, it's as simple as this. Lamar Jackson on offense. You have that big trust. I like to call it the big trust offense because essentially if you don't have Lamar at the helm, then you're not going to have anything. Like that is his baby. That's his offense. Everyone else gets better because of him. All the players around him get better because of him. And on the defensive side, they're inspired as well. They're inspired to get the stops necessary to keep the offense on the field. And quite frankly, the way they've been not just beating teams but dominating teams, I'm feeling confident that the Ravens can not only take the division. I think we're looking at the AFC representative in the Super Bowl. But what do you think?
Man, I love my team. Big trust. The Ravens, bro. What a season has it been for them. Lamar Jackson being the MVP, the record number of Pro Bowlers and all pros this team has, and all of them are all there because they're motivated. They're motivated by number 8.
Right.
And, man, what a season has it been for that team, and that's the way they've beaten the season, the second half. It's been the Ravens, man, team. And with that being said, I fully expect for the AFC Championship game to be Ravens versus the Chiefs. So then when it comes down to those two teams, and yeah, man, the Ravens are my team. The Ravens are my team. I love them. I love them so much. But man, I will say I'm really scared about the Chiefs. I'm really scared about the Chiefs, man.
Yeah, that's the one game I'm pretty nervous about on the AFC side. Like I feel like
the Chiefs team that as I said, they've looked stronger down the stretch, and remember last year they were in this AFC Championship game and were one overtime period away from getting to the Super Bowl last year, and so they're a team that's been here and they know what to expect and they know what needs to get done. And then they're also a team, the only team, that has beaten Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens not once but twice.
This is true.
Now, granted, both of those games were in Kansas City. If they meet this time, it'll be in Baltimore, so things might be a little bit different.
Right.
But, man, I'm really scared about the Chiefs. I'm really scared about the Chiefs. But I'm not sure. But I'm just not sure if I'm not sure though, because I was saying how in the NFC side last year my Super Bowl pick was the Saints. The AFC side my Super Bowl pick was the Chiefs. I had Chiefs and Saints as my Super Bowl matchup last year.
Right.
Sure. Do I want to do the same matchup this year? I don't know. I really want my Ravens team to win. Ah, man. What a time.
I feel like it's going to be different this time around when the Chiefs and Ravens play because Lamar's been further along in his development. Now, when they lost to the Chiefs, it was a close game score-wise, but that whole game we were pretty much down. Like, the Ravens were pretty much down that whole game.
That's true.
So I think this time, and it's weird because when that happened, that was way back in September the 22nd. That was when Lamar went through that little 2-game losing streak, and then all of a sudden they just exploded and started beating everybody. So I think since then the offense has come along, and mind you, that loss was back in we're talking week 3.
Yeah.
And yeah, like fresh off a close game against the Cardinals. The week before we skull dragged, the Dolphins when we thought they were going to tank this year. And, of course, we had that fluke loss to the Browns that we avenged. But, yeah, I feel like the team has just grown so much since then. And I think that when the Chiefs come to Baltimore this time, they're going to have their backs against the wall because at that point, there's going to be a lot more at stake. It's not just going to be a regular wild card game. Like there's going to be, there's a lot on the line in that game.
It's true.
Plus, Terrell Suggs, former Raven, is now on the Chiefs sideline. Like he's now a member of their team. There's going to be some bad blood there. Not full on bad blood, but there's going to be a little bit of emotion in the air. Like it's weird. Like that kind of game has more importance to it than it did earlier in the season, So I think
it's true. You know what? You know what? I'll go with my boys, and I'm gonna pick the Ravens. And part of the reason why I think I'm ultimately gonna pick the Ravens too is just something about this football team, about this Ravens football team, and the way they play the game here, and how much fun as a franchise, the team has been having top to bottom, like believing in Lamar Jackson. But you see everything about them, the hype that they have, the belief that they have in one another in that football team.
Right.
How fun that this 2019 Ravens squad has had this year. It reminds me of the 2017 Eagles when they won the Super Bowl. And how much fun they were having, and all the creative touchdown dances they had that year and everything.
Right.
And that here they were, even without their starting quarterback going through their playoff run, they still had enough belief in each other to go ahead and get that Super Bowl win with a backup quarterback against the Patriots, who were still a strong-looking Patriots team. So, I'm gonna pick the Ravens because of that. I think this team just has something about them that they can't lose.
I agree with that, man. I certainly agree with that assessment. And with that being said, we pretty much previewed and wrapped up everything. Now, the very next time I will be here, I'll be wrapping up all the wild card action from the weekend. You're always free to join me if you'd like for that, by the way. But yeah, I'm going to be wrapping up everything for this weekend and previewing the divisional playoff rounds. But folks, all I got to say is this. If your team did not make the playoffs this year, what I would hope for is that a bunch of people get fired and that a bunch of new people come in and that, a whole rebuild. So if your team didn't make it, just hope that there's some sort of change going on, because if everything stays the same, that's not a good sign. But if your team did make the playoffs this year, I wish your team luck. Let me know who you're representing in the comments. And hopefully your team doesn't choke, because if it does, that would suck. But, folks, I appreciate you all tuning in. Jay, as always, my guest, Benji, appreciate you coming by, man. Always appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Always appreciate having you. Everyone, make sure you hit like and subscribe. And I'm going to see you after Wild Card Weekend to wrap all the action up on Monday. Till then, folks, have a good weekend. I'm out.